Hey y'all, what is up? Keasbey here. So, today I want to talk about some non-gameplay specific tips for newer players who are looking to improve at the game. This is going to cover stuff that isn't so much this is how you counter this or that, or any specific combo lines really, but these are just more general things that you can do that will help you improve over time. But before we get into all that, don't forget to drop this video a like and subscribe to the channel for even more. So let's dive right in. The first thing that you can do if you are playing with an online simulator of any kind is to save replays. Now, I'm not just talking about the cool ones where you win, I'm also talking about holding on to replays in which you lost, and you can identify something in the gameplay that caused you to lose. Now, I'm not saying to beat yourself up over a mistake, but it's always good to be able to look back and learn from them. Or maybe you found yourself facing down a board that you came close to cracking but didn't quite break through. Well, load up that replay and pause it there and really break down the board and see if there was anything that you could have done. I've personally learned a lot from watching my old replays, especially ones where I lost or maybe I didn't play the situation quite as well as I could have. And I've learned some cool lines now to avoid similar situations in the future. Plus, sometimes you just stumble into cool lines of play by accident and really want to commit them to memory, so it's always helpful to have a few good replays on hand. Next, I want to talk about getting your information from more than one source. Yes, I am 100% encouraging you to not just listen to me about philanderies, but also other people testing the deck as well. There will be other insights that maybe myself or someone else doesn't have that another player does, and you're missing out by not looking at different sources to learn. There's another player who I know who is also very good with philanderies, and we disagree on the number of M-pens that you should be playing, for example, and I don't think either of us are wrong. We're just on slightly varying builds in which the optimal number of big penguins is different. It's good to take in an amalgamation of ideas and mix and match them until you find what works best for you, and no one channel or player has all the answers, as much as I wish I did. Something similar on that note, don't be afraid to copy what someone else has already done while you're learning. Now, I'm gonna say, I'm not talking about copying someone else's list or idea or combo and then claiming that you came up with it yourself. What I am saying is, if you're learning a deck, there's absolutely nothing wrong with copying one you see card for card while you learn how to play it. The more basic the version of the deck it is too, the better, so that you really start to get a feel for the standard lines of play that it has, and then you can start experimenting and trying out different tech cards to really make it your own. Flowing right out of that is, don't just accept advice without fully understanding why. For example, jumping back to the M-pen thing, I think you should just play one M-pen. And you as the listener should, and rightfully so, expect me to explain why I'm only playing one. By the way, I only play one because I think it's heavily recyclable with Toucan and Advent of Adventure and easy to loop, so there's that. Not going to go into crazy amounts of detail in this video. This goes for any major deck building choice or line of play. Just telling someone, okay, put Destroy Phoenix Enforcer in this deck because it's good, isn't really enough. Ask them, okay, does DPE work in this deck? Can I consistently make it? Does it conflict at all with lines of play that I want to do optimally, or is there maybe a better option that flows more seamlessly? Things like that. Knowing the answer without knowing how you got there will really only get you through the most basic situations, but knowing why you're doing something will win you games when things don't go exactly to plan. And if your opponent has their way, things won't go exactly to plan. Now, speaking of that, it's really good to know the weird corner case interactions your deck can do, even if they feel, well, weird and kind of useless sometimes. I played Guru Control for a very long time, and there were weird interactions I knew that fell squarely in the category of won a game once and then never occurred again. but they also lived in the back of my mind and could at times be molded into more useful plays. A more recent example of this was knowing the different ways I could access the extra deck in Flandres, which ultimately led to finding emergency ways to break a zombie world lock. Knowing stuff like this and learning doesn't just come from an understanding of why you make certain plays, but it also is going to come from practice as well. And watching your older replays is another huge help with this too, so that you can pause, really look at the board state, see what your resources are at the time and what you can do with them without the pressure of being in an in-game situation. And again, it's really good to see what other players are doing with the deck you're playing as well, and then you just kind of adapt and build onto that as well. Something else you should do, and this doesn't really just apply to what you're playing specifically, but just in general, is to know commonly played cards and lines. I love playing chess, and there are times where I'll see an opening my opponent is playing and just from experience kind of know what I'm supposed to do to respond. This gives me more time to play because I don't have to think as much about what I'm doing, and it frees up my brain to think about other plays that I could make as well. Not to say that you should ever fully go on autopilot, but for example, knowing that a Despia line is inevitably going to lead to a branded fusion, you know that you're probably going to hold on to your Ash Blossom for that. Or if you know a certain choke point in a deck that's an ideal time to Nibiru, you're going to, know to drop it at that and maybe not get distracted or tricked into using it somewhere else. This is starting to get a little more into a bit of advanced play where you start memorizing other decks combos, but the more you know, the better equipped you are. At a minimum though, you should really go into a game knowing how your own deck works and what all of your cards do. And it's gonna happen from time to time. Something comes up, like an interaction you didn't know, or maybe a ruling that you weren't familiar with. It's all part of the process. You just take that knowledge and you go forward with it. The last thing I really want to highlight, and this one is maybe the biggest one of this whole list, is to try to be open to talking to other players. Full disclosure, I had zero interest in playing Flandres when it was first announced. A buddy of mine basically bullied me into playing it, insisting it's prank kids with birds and normal summons. And by the way, he's sort of right actually. And now it's one of my favorite decks and arguably the one that I'm best with. The more people you know and talk to, the more information and ideas you're exposed to, and the more you can ultimately end up learning. And, the best players that I know tend to be the ones who are the most open to collaborating and talking out different ideas with other people. I understand it can be easier said than done, especially, if you don't live near a local game store or something like that. But even online communities can be really great as well. And just remember, some advice works, some doesn't, but as long as you're understanding the reason behind something, you can figure out what to do accordingly. Anyway, that's been my non-gameplay specific advice for how to help you just improve your game. If you learned anything, don't forget to drop this video a like, and if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for even more, and I'll catch you all later.